Welcome to episode 8 of the Up Next Network podcast. Can't believe it's already episode 8. Oliver Schaack, Matthew Levy. Oliver, those games last week, not as hype as week 4, but we still saw some good ones, right?
I mean, there were several good ones. It started on Friday out in Corvallis, continued into Saturday. A lot of really good games, a lot of games that I didn't really expect to be that close, but were. And then it was capped off with an incredible game in Oxford with Ole Miss. We'll get to all that, but yeah, great weekend of college football.
Great. I mean, awesome, action-packed. Our teams look good. I know both of our teams have some big games this week, which we'll get into. I know you're going up to Ohio State. How excited are you?
Dude, I'm fired up. To call that game, to go to Columbus, that's where dreams are made. Let alone being a fan, to actually be able to call that game and broadcast, potentially next to Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be a great weekend.
And where can we find the link so we can watch?
I will show it. It'll be on Mixler.com. I will send the link. We will get that going. You can tune into it. It'll be a live stream. I'll get that going for you. I can actually send it right now, and you'll be able to just click right on Mixler. WMUC Sports Radio is what it's called. It'll be me and my broadcast partner, Nathan Schwartz, who's also fantastic, and it'll be a great listen.
Yeah, we'll put it up on the Up Next Network social media platforms, accounts, Instagram, TikTok. If you listen to this, you know that. All right, let's move into this. You know, it was an interesting week, and we'll start here. We saw Oregon State now in 2 big games in a row. And my theory is on Oregon State, you know, in the game against Cam Ward, they had a quarterback disadvantage. In this game, they had the quarterback advantage with DJ, but he wasn't great. Where do you stand on Oregon State going forward?
I think they're a great team overall. Defense is real. The defense is real. They've shown that over the course of the season. Obviously, against Cam Ward, it didn't show as great, but Cam Ward he's been one of the 5 best quarterbacks in America this year. I think that's a fair statement, and one of the best in the Pac-12 as well. But other than that, Oregon State, they're a top 20 total defense in the country. I think they're legit. The problem is, if DJ can't perform to the level of the other quarterbacks in the Pac-12, Caleb Williams, Shedeur Sanders, although Colorado struggled, Bo Nix, etc., Michael Penix, then Oregon State's not going to be able to make any big push in the Pac-12. But overall, a great team and a huge win for them. They really needed that.
Yeah, and they don't really play a team until Washington and Oregon the last 2 weeks. So do you see Oregon State, where do you see them falling in? Is it at 9 or 10? Can they make a push for the Pac-12? Where do you see them?
The only way I see Oregon State making a true push for the Pac-12 is if other things have to fall perfectly in line. Now, they do have Washington at home, and Corvallis is not an easy place to play. That does bode well for them, but they also have to take the care of business beforehand. They have a tough game against UCLA. Colorado has proven not to be the easiest place to play, even though USC went in and took care of business. They didn't exactly do it cleanly, so not an easy place to play. And then Oregon to finish up the season, you need to make sure your health is 100%. You have to be playing your best. I think there's too many variables for Oregon State to be a legitimate Pac-12 contender.
But do you think these next couple games, right, because they don't play anyone for about a month, can this get DJ right? Because it feels like he's making strides, and he was hurt in that game, so it's kind of a weird game for him. But they did throw for over 200 yards against a very good Utah defense.
And to his credit, especially in the second half, he had some big throws. He had some big throws in the play action to convert for first downs. He's playing Cal this weekend. That should be a game Oregon State can take care of pretty easily. Cal's they're not a terrible team, but Oregon State's clearly better. And they're better on defense. They're better on offense. DJ's clearly the best quarterback. Jonathan Smith, clearly the best head coach. DJ needs to show out this weekend. He needs to have a big weekend to get his confidence up, because next weekend, even though they're home, UCLA, and you're playing Dante Moore. He's proven to be a legitimate quarterback as a freshman. I know he struggled against Utah as well, but UCLA is a great team and another fantastic defense.
All right, let's switch gears to Utah here, because we've heard about Cam Rising. We've talked about him on this podcast since episode 3 about whether he's going to play in this game and how do we pick based on whether he plays since Florida, that week 0 game or week 1 game. What is the deal with him, A? And B, are you penalizing Utah for this loss? Let's say they run the table, Cam Rising comes back, they run the table, and maybe they have one more loss. Are you penalizing Utah for this loss going forward?
Well, they got penalized pretty heavily. They dropped, I believe, 8 spots in the AP top 25. And they had Nate Johnson, who he was good against Florida. He was pretty solid against Florida opening game, but since then it hasn't really been the same. And on Friday, I mean, he was 8 for 23, just had over 100 yards passing. I don't think he looked comfortable at all. He looked frazzled, so they tried to bring in Bryson Barnes as a backup for Johnson, and he couldn't get anything going. If Rising doesn't return, Utah doesn't really stand a chance in the Pac-12. If there is a conference you need a quarterback, it's the Pac-12. So if Utah can't figure that out, hopefully Rising comes back. I mean, you thought with the amount of time he's had, it's obviously an ACL injury, but you're right. He's been questionable for every single game this year, and we all thought maybe he'd show out and play in Oregon State, but he didn't. So if he doesn't play, I don't see a place where Utah can make a push.
Yeah, that makes sense. By the way, picked that game right too. I picked this game right
We
as
both
well.
did. We both did.
We both had your Oregon State, but Florida, Kentucky. Did we both have Kentucky?
I had Kentucky.
I had Kentucky as well on the big three.
Yeah.
On one reaction. But so my thing with Kentucky is they played great. They went up early though. They went up 16-0 early, and their quarterback Devin Leary from NC State, who's had his moments, 2021 great year.
Yeah,
69 passing yards. That's not going to do it versus Georgia. Do you think Kentucky is for real, or is it just a product of they were at home, they gave their best, Florida's not that good, and now they're going to fall back to earth against Georgia?
The other thing with him having 69 passing yards, he was 9 of 20. So he wasn't even completing a lot of passes. He couldn't get anything going. And thank God Ramon Davis, the running back, thank God he had 280 yards on the ground. And he had 3 touchdowns to go along with it. Thank God Kentucky ran for 329 yards in a game against a Florida defense that allowed just over 82 rush yards a game before that. This was a complete abnormality. You can't use that same philosophy playing Georgia in Georgia and expect to win. Georgia's not going to – that defense is too suffocating. I'm just going to say it now. You're not rushing for 329 yards against the Georgia defense. You're not getting 200 rush yards in the first half. You need to have Devin Leary, who you brought through the portal. This was supposed to be your guy. He's got to step up and have a better weekend if they want any shot this week.
Yeah, I just feel like that matchup with the way they looked, and we'll get into Georgia, just the way they just kind of got better and better, and Bowers emerging, Beck getting better each game. That just feels like if you can't throw the ball, it's going to be a long day in Athens.
Oh, it would be if they played the same way. If Devin Leary has the same type of game against Georgia, the score is going to be way more lopsided than it was in the win this week. It's going to be Georgia 33, but probably another 20 points. If Devin Leary can't get it together, so he needs to have a much better game. Maybe it's play style, play calling. Maybe there's something that needs to be changed, but that was not a good performance at all.
And maybe it's just the fact that they went up early and they were just going to run the ball. But that you're right about the completion percentage. You can have 69 yards if you only throw it 5 times. He threw it a lot more, and he missed a lot of passes. That to me is concerning.
That's true, but to his credit, earlier in the first half, he did have a touchdown pass that he threw that was dropped on 3rd and goal to the back of the end zone, and it was dropped. That would have been another touchdown pass for him. But still, even with that given, you can't have that bad of a day passing and expect to go into Georgia and to win. Carson Beck looking a lot better too. He looks really comfortable right now, or more comfortable than he did in the first part of the season. And now he's going to be at home again. That Kentucky defense is going to have a lot of trouble stopping Carson Beck if your quarterback can't complete passes.
Yep, you're right. And I think these 2 defenses would as well. USC, Colorado. Colorado goes down early and they come back and it's great. To me, and I said this last week on this podcast, I said, I see Oregon and Washington in tier 1, and then I see USC in tier 2.
Yeah,
I think that stands pat after this game because that defense, not great.
No, it's not. And the thing is, they were up 41-14 going in the 3rd quarter. I think at that point it was 34-14 at half, and then they scored a touchdown, 41-14 in the 3rd quarter. You cannot let the Buffs get back into that game. That just shows the secondary was getting torched in that second half. They had a freshman receiver, Amarion Miller, broke the Buffs receiving yards record. There we go, with 196. That can't happen if you're USC. Because guess what? It's the same thing we talk about with Kentucky and Leary. That defense doesn't hold up against Georgia. That defense does not hold up against a Michigan and Ohio State, whoever. Let alone the Pac-12. Because if they thought that offense was good luck playing Washington. Because they are Colorado times 100. And that I know I'm a huge Washington guy, or Oregon, whoever, but really Washington. Anyone, you're gonna. I mean, they gave I had to throw it in. They gave up 41 points today. That could be 61 with Washington. You can't have that.
And my theory on this is USC and Lincoln Riley, they want to throw the ball. They just want to throw. That doesn't help your defense. The way Michigan plays, the way Ohio State has played this year is, hey, we're going to control the clock. We're going to control time of possession. Colorado had more first downs, longer time of possession, and more yards. USC is built through the defensive line. They want to get pressure. They got pressure in the first half because they were not tired. In the second half, that's when they got a little tired on the defensive line, and all of a sudden you're leaving your secondary out to dry. Now, the running back for USC only had 13 carries. Do you think Lincoln Riley, as good as Caleb Williams is, needs to adjust his play style just to give his defense a little bit of rest and to kind of play a little bit more complementary football?
It's hard to say that, because is that their best brand of football then if they don't do that? Because just to bring them up again, look at Washington. They don't run the ball all too much. It's pretty much Penix drops back and he's got about 3 receivers that can make plays. That's the same thing with USC. Caleb Williams drops back. Brendan Rice can make a play. Dorian Singer could make a play. Taj Washington could make a play. You kind of do have to play to your strength. Now, Marshawn Lloyd, I think that dude has an NFL future. Based on what I've seen over the course of the past few games, he looks phenomenal. If you want to get him more involved, I think that's only going to help you. But they have too many receivers to not use. And they have too much in the passing game to not use them, especially in the Pac-12. You got to be able to sling it. You got to be able to use the vertical game to take it. Like against the Washington, I don't see how adding more of a run game would help Caleb Williams. He's so good that you don't need an elite run game to help set up that passing game. But from a defensive perspective, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
To me, when you play like that and you make your defense continue to go out in the field, even though when you're in a blowout, it doesn't make any sense. The way you win, and especially on a higher level against these teams, if you get a lead, you got to protect the lead. And as much as you want to score, you're hurting your defense if you can just continue to put them back on the field. I mean, the fact that Colorado down that many points is dominating yards, dominating first down, dominating time of possession. That to me is not a good sign when it's not going to be a blowout next time when you play Washington or Oregon. And Oregon's going to say, and they're going to run the ball. And they're going to say, Caleb Williams, you're off the field. And if USC can't counter that, to me, that's where the tier separation happens.
And last week when I said I've been a Washington homer, I had them in the college football playoff, excuse me. When I said last year, I was a little worried after I saw Oregon. To your credit, Oregon's run game, I think we can fairly say, is better than Washington's because they got more guys in that backfield. That's how they took advantage of Colorado in that game. And if you have that versatility, that helps the defense. And Oregon's defense has been better than Washington. So to your credit, yeah, you see the more balanced game helping the defense. That's why, to me, Oregon is so scary. Because if their defense can hold up the way they have, they're pretty solid.
10 days from now, Oregon, Washington. Oregon wins in Washington.
You're going to go on the record and say that.
I'm going on the record. I think they're a more complete team. The quarterback, to me, is not as big of a difference because of how good Bo Nix has played. The way they run the ball, if they can run the ball like that and they can play defense, they're going to get more stops. And there's a revenge factor from last year. Bo Nix was hurt in that game.
He was.
To me, if Oregon can run the ball and play defense the way they have been, they win that game.
Michael Penix is not going to let that happen. Because to me, I love Bo Nix. Michael Penix, to me, it's him and Caleb Williams are in their own tier. I don't think Bo Nix is in the same tier. I'm so big on Michael Penix. Their receiving core, they got top 2-round picks at wide receiver, Ndunze and Jalen McMillan. If they're healthy, their offensive line comes to play, which is the best in the Pac-12, I would say. I don't see a way Washington is able to put up numbers. And there's no way Oregon's going to go into Washington and not get at least a little frazzled by that Washington atmosphere. That is one of the hardest places to play in America. I just don't see a way that Penix is not going to be able to still succeed. And I think they're going to have to play fast. They're going to have to get Penix going because he's not going to be able to just sit. I think that's a big thing, tire out that Oregon defense. And if they do that, Washington's going to win.
Saturday, October 14th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we've got Oregon, Washington. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, USC, Notre Dame. What a weekend it will be. And we'll break it all down next week. I know that. Let's move here. We talked about them a little bit. Are you buying Carson Beck in Georgia right now?
I think he's going to do enough to keep Georgia at number one because basically if Georgia doesn't lose a game, they're number one going into college football, or at least in the SEC championship game. But with that being said, he still needs to show a little bit more. I think this was a huge learning point for him going into Auburn and playing well. He played very well. He had to grow up like that quick, and he did. We need to see more of that, though, because we didn't see that at home against South Carolina earlier in the year. And you saw in that first half, Spencer Rattler took advantage of that, a veteran SEC quarterback. Going later into the season, I think it's fair to say Georgia's going to win their respective division and go to the SEC championship game. Whoever they play coming out of the West, they're going to be coming for him. They're not going to let him just make plays all over the field.
Well, how good is the SEC West? I mean, these teams are flying like flies. LSU we thought was going to be good. They're not that great. Ole Miss, I don't know. Alabama, we know their concerns. So realistically, Georgia can get away. I think it's just crazy to me that they have such an easy schedule.
Yeah, there's got to be rules implemented for that because I mean, whoever their AD is, he's doing his job. I mean, he's doing his job to the highest degree. But you're right, the SEC West has not shown out as much this year. But if Georgia wants to make that step and be like the elite team in the country, because in my opinion, there's no elite team in the country. There's no team that's here, everyone down here. There's just a bunch of fantastic teams, but there's no real separation.
And did you think, just to clarify, last couple years, did you have Georgia here and then everyone else down here? Or
No question.
Okay.
No
question. So
question.
this is a change. Okay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Like I'm going into the college football playoff last year. Kudos to Ohio State playing so close. But to me, Georgia was just the better team. I mean, Georgia was just better than everyone. They had no blemishes. This year they do. Carson Beck has not been dominant, right? Outside of Bowers, there hasn't been another guy who's really stepped up and been that guy. It's been a plethora of their other receivers. They need a guy to step out in that position, in my opinion. Defense is fantastic, though. I just think there's not one elite team in the country. I think there's many fantastic teams, but there's not one team that's right here.
And you give Georgia credit, and I continue to say this. Carson Beck winning in Auburn when Cam Newton's there, when Charles Barkley's there, SEC on CBS, big spot, road game, you're down late, or it's close late. That's a big deal, and that's a big win. As Kirby Smart said, that's a big win on the road.
I agree. No, he was right to say that in the post-game interview. That's a big win. It's in the SEC. It's on the road. Beck looked a lot better than before, but that can't be a one-hit wonder. That's got to keep improving.
QBR has gone up in each of the past 4 weeks. All right, my team, I think that this was the most complete performance, and everyone's saying that as well. But I think the big thing was they switched up the offensive line, bringing in Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, benching Miles Hinton, moving Barnhart, the original left tackle, to right tackle. They ran for 249 yards against the number 2 ranked rushing defense. To me, that's sustainable, right? Because now you go on the road again against Minnesota. We can get into that later. But do you feel better about Michigan after that game versus Nebraska?
One thing you said, the 249 rushing yards against the number 2 rush defense. Blake Corum only had 74 of those. It wasn't Blake Corum going off and they just were like, hand him the rock, go do your thing. Michigan ran for 249 rushing yards. It wasn't Blake Corum. To me, that's what the story is here, because you didn't have to rely on your star player. And then in the passing game, J.J. McCarthy threw it 16 times, completed it 12 times, 2 touchdowns, both to Roman Wilson. You have that outside threat that you can go to. That first catch in the first quarter was unbelievable in the end zone, where he wrapped it around the Nebraska player. Unbelievable play. Defense, no questions there. I mean, there's 10 guys that could potentially go to the NFL on that defense. It's ridiculous. Michigan looked fantastic. I always believed that Michigan could play up to this level this year. To me, they're the team clearly knocking on the door of Georgia. And yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. Michigan was fantastic.
And that's and that, sorry to cut you off there, but I think that's a really good point about Corum. Last year versus Nebraska, he had to run it 30 plus times at home. This year he ran it for 16. They gave Edwards 14, Kalel Mellings 5. Like, that's better balance, and that will keep them fresher going forward. I kept saying it last year. I'm like, you can't run Blake Corum 30 times. And then he gets hurt. Now he's more fresh. And I think that's a big point you bring up for Michigan going forward.
And on top of that, when you guys beat Ohio State last year, who was the unsung hero? In the backfield.
Donovan.
Exactly. You were able to have 2 guys in that backfield, or 2 threats, and then out wide, you guys had receivers that did their thing in the second half, and game was over from there.
Right. I mean, we didn't have Corum. Hopefully he's healthy for this one. But now this game, these 2 SEC teams, and we've kind of referenced it a little bit. I don't know what my takeaway from LSU Ole Miss is. LSU's defense, I have no idea what happened. They have the best pass rusher in the country, and they've let up 40 points and 50 points respectively to Florida State and Ole Miss. Ole Miss last week only put up 10 against Bama. So my second takeaway is Bama. I think this raises their profile.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. I mean, they held Ole Miss. I forget what the final score of that game was, but they held, was it 24-10, something like that?
Yeah, 24-10.
24-10 when they played Ole Miss. That showed me that Bama defense was real. They have guys all over the field, right? So for Ole Miss to drop 50 and a nickel the next weekend, that looks great for Alabama. So now it's on the other side of the ball. Can Jaden Milroe, if he's given the rest of the starts for the season, which we all assume he will, can he keep up with that defense? If he can, then yeah, Alabama's a true threat. But it has to be consistent. You can't keep putting up low scoring amounts. They killed it at Mississippi State this weekend. That was a big win for them, big statement for their offense to be able to get that. But the same thing with Carson Beck. Is it sustainable? Can you continue to do it? Is it a one-hit wonder? Now, for Ole Miss, this is kind of what I expected to see against Alabama, because I didn't know if Alabama could keep up with Ole Miss offensively, but their defense came out to show. Huge weekend for Jackson Dart. Judkins is one of the best backs in America. Lane Kiffin should feel great about this. It's just a big win for the program. And who knows? Maybe they carry that momentum into the season. Obviously, Ole Miss has a history of going, 8-1, 8-0, and then losing 2 of 3, which they've done for years now. But it was a big win. And by the way, this is the most open the SEC West has been. So there is also that to play as well.
I just think the loss against Alabama kind of takes them out of it. I don't know. Do you really see Alabama losing out, like losing to one of these teams? Like, to me, now they play at LSU, they play in Auburn. They can run the ball. And I think this week, and we'll get to it later, might be the toughest test for them going forward, just because of the way Texas A&M can match up with that offensive line in that run game.
Well, that's the thing. They have a lot of losable games in the later half. Look, they're going to A&M this weekend. Then they have Tennessee. Then they have LSU. Then they have Kentucky on the road. We just saw what happened to Florida when you go to Kentucky on the road. And we saw them be able to shut down Florida offensively, right?
Florida.
And I'm just saying, Florida came into that game, great rushing defense. Kentucky destroyed them. And that atmosphere was great. These are not games that you can just say Alabama's going to win. You can't just say they're going to win in Texas A&M. If there's a place where they have some type of bad juju where they can't go in and win, it's Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it is Aggie land. This is not an easy remaining part of their schedule. And say what you want, Alabama Auburn rivalry. You never know. You never know, especially in Auburn this year. Who knows in that game?
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, let's move here. Notre Dame, my takeaway is, and we've discussed this, it's been kind of, all right, they were so good with Sam Hartman in those first 3-4 games. Since in the last 2, they've put up under 25 points in both games.
Yep.
Is it a product of their defense, the defenses they've played, both top 20 defenses, or is it the fact that the level of competition went up? Like, what has happened to Sam Hartman this passing offense?
I think there's a little bit of that playing that great defenses. Ohio State has one of the best defenses in the country. They played a phenomenal game against Hartman. They didn't let him get into rhythm. They didn't let the passing game go. But for Notre Dame, going against Duke is not the same as Ohio State. Great defense, but Ohio State, they're on a different level defensively right now. They're one of they're top 5 defense in the country. I don't think anyone would say Duke is right now. The thing that scares me is that Notre Dame couldn't keep drives going. They were 3 for 15 on third down. I don't care what defense you're playing. You can't be 20% on third down. That's just not going to win you any games, especially against a team when they play USC. Good luck going 3 for 15 on third down and giving Caleb Williams the ball. That's not going to work for you. You got to be able to convert. Hartman only had 222 yards through the air. Running game looked pretty good, especially later in the fourth quarter. And maybe that's the identity of their team. But I think Notre Dame, they need Hartman to play better. He's had a rough past 2 weeks, and we'll see if he can snap out of it.
I'm putting you on the spot here. We're about probably close to halfway through, right? We're entering week 6, 13 weeks. Can you give me your top 4 right now?
Top 4 teams in the country?
Top 4 teams making the playoff. Go.
Okay. Based on what I've seen, Georgia, I think if they go undefeated, there's not really conversation there. Best team in the Big Ten to me still is Michigan. It's still Michigan. Although, to your credit, Buckeyes look pretty damn good so far. And that defense is a sustainable defense. Penn State, I still have some worries about them because Drew Aller's not looked good on the road, and they have a lot of big road games this year. So a little worried about Penn State. So I'd go Georgia. I'd go Michigan. Texas until they lose. I mean, this is a big weekend game for them coming up, right? But if they win that game and they run the Big 12, I would say Texas. They have a real defense deep at the wide receiver position. Jonathan Brooks, their running back, had a crazy game this weekend against a ranked opponent. And then I'm sticking with Washington because I think that is the most dangerous offense in the country. I think at any point they can put 60 on you. And if I were to put a outside the bubble team, I would say it's probably Ohio State.
So no Florida State.
No Florida State. No.
With the win versus LSU, with the win versus Clemson, they are not in your top 4.
Washington or Florida State, who's better? Right now, if they play.
Yeah, I think it's Washington.
It's Washington. And by the way, Oregon or Florida State. It's Oregon.
Yeah, 100%. That one, yeah.
That's the thing. So if Oregon is the team that goes 12-0, then they're the team in the college football playoff because say what you want, Pac-12 has been the best conference in the country. I don't think there's a question anymore. It's been the best.
Yeah.
I thought it would be the best. I was ridiculed viciously, verbally abused. It's the best conference in the country. All right. There's no debate anymore. There's like a billion quarterbacks that are going in the NFL in that conference. Whoever wins that conference guaranteed to make the college football playoff.
Yeah. I just don't know who ridiculed you at all. My top four, and I'll
A
give
huge
quick.
idiot. Continue.
My top four, I'm going to agree for most of them. I'm going to switch up the order on you, though. To me, this season, Texas is the best team in the country right now. They have proven it with their resume. Yeah, interesting. Let me go through this. Their resume has shown that they've beat 2 top 25 teams. The best win we've seen in about 3 to 4 years at Alabama, probably since Oregon beating Ohio State, to me, in the non-conference.
Fair.
The fact that they've continued to, they have an excellent quarterback. They are balanced now with Brooks running for over 200 yards this past weekend. They have 2 excellent wide receivers, and their defense. If you watch them just this year, and I've had my doubts about looking at Texas history, I'm looking at this year. Texas has played each game completely. They've looked complete as a team. It has emerged last week with the way they've run the ball, and they have the best win in the country. So to me, it is Texas number 1. It is Georgia number 2 because of the way Carson Beck has improved. It is Michigan number 3 just because they continue to look great and they've gotten better and better in each game. And number 4, it's Oregon because of the way they have they dominated Colorado, and the way that their defense and run game have shown, I think is just a little bit stronger than Washington, USC, and Florida State. Those to me, right now, the 4 most complete teams in college football.
That's very fair. I mean, look, it's like neck and neck between Washington and Oregon right now. I'm a little nervous, but I'm such a believer in that offense. I'm such a believer in Kalen DeBoer. Not that I'm not in Dan Lanning. He's shown to be a fantastic head coach at Oregon. There's just something different in the water in Washington right now. Offensively, I think this is one of the scariest offenses in the country, if not the scariest. I think USC is the only team that you can say is scarier as far as they can put up, 30 points like that. Problem is USC's defense. We just saw what happened. Now Washington's defense not as good as
I just have
Oregon.
one question: Are college football playoffs won with offense? Are big games like Ohio State, Michigan won with offense?
Did you see the score? Did you see the score of last year's national championship when Georgia put up 65?
I'm talking about, was Georgia known for their offensive firepower, or were they known for their defensive identity?
How many points did they put up in each game?
All I'm saying is you got to be a complete team to compete. You do.
That same Georgia defense gave up 42 to Ohio State. They don't win that game if they don't have an elite offense.
But they were known for being, I just think the fact that they put up 65, but they also held TCU a great offense 3. So to me, I think you got to be complete. And Washington, we don't know. We still don't know. And they kind of struggled against Arizona a little bit. Let them come back in that game. I don't know. To me, Oregon right now, until I see it on the field in 10 days, is the more complete team out of the 2.
That's fair. But I do want to say, to defend Washington, struggling for them was 31 points, over 400 total yards. Penix at 350 yards. Like struggling, the score doesn't indicate really how the game went. I mean, their offense still looked great. Now I do agree that Arizona came out of nowhere. I thought that was going to be an easy game for them. But Oregon going into Washington, that's just such a hard place to play. If it was flipped and they were going into Eugene, I would probably lean Oregon. But I think having that home field advantage is going to play such a factor.
That's a fair point. All right, let's rip through week 6 quickly. Maryland, your team, you're calling the game. Can Maryland have a chance to win?
They can have a chance. They can have a chance against the Bucks. Or the Buckeyes.
Give me the reasons.
The offensive line was the biggest worry coming into this year. They lost 4 or 5 starters from last year. DJ Glaze, who was the right tackle last year, left tackle this year, only guy returning, right? They have protected Talia about 1,000 times better than anyone expected. This Ohio State front 4, if it's Sawyer, Tui Maloau, Mike Hall Jr., and Tyreek Williams, the 2 defensive tackles. If you can just keep them away from Talia, give them enough time to make plays, this offense is good enough to where they can convert and keep drives sustainable and keep them going. Now, Roman Hemby has to show up at the running back. He has not had over 54 yards, I believe, in the past 3 games. And this was a guy who last year was sensational for Maryland. He's had a bit of a quiet start. Defensively, you got to shut down the run. It comes down to that. The passing defense has been great for Maryland so far this year. No quarterbacks really had a huge game up to this point. And McCord is not someone who takes a lot of deep down the field attempts anyway. It's going to be, can you shut down the running game, whether it's Trayvon Henderson, whether it's Mayan Williams, whether it's Chip Trayanum, whoever. They're able to do those 2 things. This offense is good enough to keep up with Ohio State's. I will argue that. This offense is good enough to keep up with Ohio State's. But it's not good enough if Talia's running for his life.
Do you guys have a chance? Chance?
Oh, we have a chance. We have a chance.
If you had to rank, I mean this in the most genuine way possible. If you had to rank the worst 3 teams in Division I think I would rank them Virginia, Indiana, and Michigan State. Those are the last 3 opponents you've played. I'll start there. Number 2, Ohio State this year, and I've continued to say this, they're a more complete team. Instead of just throw, they're running the ball on second down because they're protecting their quarterback a little bit more, which unlike USC, I think helps them play a little bit more complementary football, allows the defense to rest a little bit more. To me, offensive line, you just talked about it. They can't generate a run game. So if you can't generate a run, JT and Sawyer off the edge, they generated 8 pressures against a really good Notre Dame defense. And then the week before that, they got better and better. They're going to have a field day. So if you can't run the ball, this is going to get ugly quick. There's a reason it's 19.5. I just see it as a talent mismatch.
My one argument to that would be, when Ohio State played a good defense this year, did they have problems moving the ball? Yes, they did. By the way,
are you guys Notre Dame's defense though? Let's be real.
No, we're not Notre Dame's defense, but we're better than Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, and whoever they played in the opener. Indiana. We're better than all 3 of those defenses. We're better than all 3 of those teams. Okay. By the way, Kyle McCord, he struggled against Indiana. He didn't put up 50 points in that game.
On the road, first road start. Now he's at home. There's a different vibe. I don't know.
Oh. Did you expect him to struggle on the road against Indiana yesterday?
I did. It was his first. It was his first start in Indiana.
Did you expect 23 points to be on the board at the end of the game?
I didn't expect 23. I didn't think. I thought they would run the ball right down their throat.
Okay. Also, it's going to be. I just think I'm not going to say. I would not come here on saying Marvin Harrison's going to struggle, but it's going to be interesting to see how they play because the one game Marvin Harrison struggled in conference last year, it was Maryland. The problem is Deontay Banks was guarding him, who was 6'3".
Yeah,
Target still is our top defensive back. He's 5'10".
Yeah, he's not there anymore.
Deontay Banks, he's not there, of course. So they're gonna have to blanket it over the top with the safety. I don't see if they leave him on one-on-one coverage, it's gonna be a field day. I don't see that happening. The problem is Ohio State has about 3 gajillion NFL receivers, so it's kind of hard to double one and leave Buka open or Fleming. I'm not gonna say like Maryland's gonna. I can't say objectively, oh yeah, Maryland's gonna come in and win that game. There's a reason Ohio State's favored by so much. Ohio State has to take this seriously though. That's all I'm saying. They cannot not take Maryland serious. This is the best Maryland has looked in a long time, in a very long time.
And I think they do. I think it's just a nice spot for them. Off the bye, they played them close last year in Maryland. I think they'll be ready to go, personally. All right. Now let's move to the game that everyone else is going to watch. Besides you, I'm sorry that you have to miss this. Like, I really genuinely, I mean, it's going to be cool. Like, you might get blown out, but whatever. Oklahoma, Texas. Yeah. This is the game of the week. College game days there. And the spread, as much as I just hyped up Texas, number 1 team in the country, in my opinion, I think OU has a chance.
Oh, they have a chance. Oh my God, they have a chance. I would say OU, outside of the top 10, they are one of the more dangerous teams in the country. If you're talking about
last week, we said it last week.
Yeah. If you were to put the question up, college football playoff team outside the top 10 who could sneak in, it's probably OU. Oklahoma is probably one of those teams that if they could sneak in if they play their cards right. Dylan Gabriel's a real quarterback. Brett Venables has brought up that defense to a level that Oklahoma's never seen. Never in the Lincoln Riley days. Never. Even last year, you saw the improvement. They had a ton of close games. Best defense they've had. Best overall team, I would say, they've had as far as the defense coming together with the offense. Quinn Ewers, when he's under pressure, That's when he makes his mistakes. He's had his off games. 10-10 going into the fourth against Wyoming. After beating Alabama on the road, there have been times where it's been a little bit questionable. If you can get him mentally frazzled, I think that's when Oklahoma can create their own opportunities to score, and Dylan Gabriel can run the table. That being said, this is the most talented team outside at the wide receiver position Texas has had in a while. They have a real running back. They've always had one with Bijan, but they have Jonathan Brooks, who's a real running back. He had a great week last week against Kansas. It's going to be tough for both sides. I think it's if Quinn Ewers, bottom line, if Oklahoma can apply the pressure on Quinn Ewers to make those quick throws, indecisive throws, Oklahoma's defense is good enough to take advantage. However, the offensive line comes up the show for Texas. They give Quinn Ewers the time to make the plays to his elite wide receivers, that elite wide receiving core. Yeah, Texas wins.
Yeah. I mean, look, as much as I think Oklahoma has a chance, to me, this comes down to, and I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Oklahoma has the guys to match up in the secondary. They have a top 10 passing efficiency defense. They have the dudes. And Brent Venables is going to know, let's take the explosives away. Like, that's what we're going to take away. To me, it's going to be a matter of the fact, can Texas stay patient and run the ball with Jonathan Brooks? Because I thought that was the most interesting development from last week. If they can run the ball consistently and you forcing Ewers, he doesn't have to do too much, 25 to 30 throws instead of 40 to 50. And then on the other side, OU has not proven they can run the ball. They have not.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, they haven't ran the ball great. So if Texas runs the ball well and OU struggles a little bit and Ewers doesn't have all the pressure, to me, it might be tough for OU to win. However, if it turns into both teams need a throw, I know Oklahoma let up a couple big plays against Iowa State in the first half, but if it turns into Ewers versus Gabriel, and that's the matchup, then OU has the advantage. But if Texas can run the ball like they did last week, even to a little bit of an extent, then Texas, to me, is the more talented team and wins. But if it turns into a quarterback matchup, OU has the advantage.
All right, I'm going to challenge you right there. You just said if it's Gabriel versus Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel has the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Is Dylan Gabriel a better quarterback to you than Quinn Ewers? For your number one team in the country?
Look, Ewers has had some spots, but I don't know. In some moments, he's more talented. We get that. But in some moments, just feels like he's not as consistent, in my opinion, as Dylan.
I feel like Gabriel has had halves or games where he hasn't looked that great this year. I mean, against Cincinnati, it was on the road, get it, big noon slot. I think they put up 20 points. Like, that wasn't a dominating performance.
He was so good versus Iowa State, though. He was making every play.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, he's phenomenal. This offense is great. I just think Texas has more weapons, more ways to get through that Oklahoma defense than Oklahoma. They seem to be a bit more one-dimensional. So if that's the way it's going to go, Texas has the advantage.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Bama A&M. To me, Texas A&M matches up a little bit on the line of scrimmage. Going to come down to the quarterback play once again. Probably, I think it's closer than people think. There's a reason why this line's 2.5. A&M's going to be fired up, 3:30 CBS, kind of similar to that Auburn-Georgia game last week. Does A&M have a chance?
I think in this game, a big thing is going to be time of possession. It's going to be who has the ball more. You just got to keep it out of the other team's hands. And I think the big thing that Alabama has shown, their weaknesses on offense, is when they turn over the ball, when they give the opposing team opportunities. Happened in Texas, happened in South Florida, which no one expected, but it did happen when they had turnovers. It kept South Florida in that game. The problem with A&M, though, is that they don't have their starting quarterback. He's out for the year. It's going to be Max Johnson, the backup. I don't know if the first game where you come in as the starter against a Nick Saban-led defense is exactly the way to bring a kid into college football. I don't care that I get it's at Kyle Allen Field, 12th man. I get that. This is a Nick Saban defense. You just saw what they did Jackson Dart, who just dropped 55 on Saturday. It's going to be such a hard adjustment for him. It's one thing to watch film and feel prepared. It's another thing when you see Dallas Turner coming off the edge, right? It's going to be hard for, I think, Texas A&M to sustain an offense. I see Alabama winning this. I do see it being a lower scoring game than probably most do. I think A&M can keep it close for a bit, but I just think Alabama is just too good for a backup quarterback to come in and win.
Yeah, over under 46.5. And I was prepared to come on here probably 2 hours ago and pick Texas A&M, but your reasoning just convinced me. I just don't see Nick Saban losing to a backup. And especially Jimbo. He's going to be motivated. Those guys are going to be fired up. Feels like Alabama just kind of turned a quarter. They've started to lean into their strengths a little bit more. And if that game gets close and becomes a running game, it feels like Jalen Milroe and that running game will just overpower Texas A&M. And Max Johnson could make a couple of mistakes. So I like Bama.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Saban, he's not going to, the play calling, he's going to kind of gatekeep Milroe. I don't see a lot of play calling where it's, all right, go make a play, right? No. It's going to be things that play to his strengths that he knows he does well, and he's going to pound it down A&M's throat.
And then he can take that shot over the top like he did last week.
If it's there, right. But in A&M, you can't take the risk of risky plays, right? You don't, Milroe hasn't shown he can be that guy who can make those consistent, risky 50-50 ball plays. And in A&M with that crowd, I don't see that happening. I think Alabama's going to control the ball, run the ball, force it down their throat, and win this game.
Kentucky, Georgia, quick. To me, I think it's Georgia is back to themselves. They went by 3 touchdowns. Any chance for Kentucky?
If there's going to be a chance, I think it's just make Carson Beck uncomfortable. But even with that, Georgia has a running game. They have the better defense. It's in Athens. I think this is too much to ask for Kentucky. If they keep it close, I think that says a lot about this Kentucky team, but I agree with you. I see Georgia winning this game. 14.5 to me, to be honest, I think that's pretty easily going to be the over 14.5 point victory for Georgia. I don't really see a way you can have a quarterback who threw for 69 yards, do that this week and win.
Yeah, Carson Beck. QBR has improved the last 4 games. Winning on the road like that gives them a lot of confidence. They're back home. And if Kentucky takes away Brock Bowers, it's going to be, hey, where's my one-on-one coverage? It's going to be easy throwing. And I just can't get over the 69 yards. I'm sorry. I don't care if it was a blowout. 69 yards. Can't do that versus Georgia. And you can't be one-dimensional. No. All right. Notre Dame, Louisville. It's just Notre Dame is in just some of these weird spots. They feel like they have an advantage probably everywhere, but I can't even touch this game because I look at it and I say, Notre Dame has been at home versus Ohio State, emotional game. Last week, at Duke, emotional game, game day, whatever. This week, they're at Louisville, emotional game, prime time, against a team that's getting better and better with Jack Plummer. Next week, they're home versus USC, prime time. It could be game day. It's going to be emotional. Right. This is a tough spot. I know they're favored by 6.5, but very tough spot for Notre Dame.
I agree, and you just said it with Louisville. They got into the top 25. They haven't been there since the Lamar Jackson
over
days.
Your Terrapins.
Shouldn't have been, but it's fine. I have my reasons. They make sense. Louisville, they're ranked in the top 25. That is proven. Think back to the Lamar Jackson days. That's a pretty good home atmosphere. I don't know if you remember that game, Florida State coming in to Louisville. Lamar Jackson, the quarterback. Now, granted, this Plummer guy is not Lamar Jackson, but my point being, this can be an atmosphere that can disrupt a quarterback. A struggling quarterback coming into this, might I add, in Sam Hartman. The offense hasn't looked fluid. It's going to be a close game. I think the line 6.5. I don't think you could have set a better line. I think it's going to be a very close game. I could see the under hitting here just because if Hartman keeps struggling and not being efficient and not being able to pass the ball through the air, Louisville has a shot. They really do.
It's tough because Louisville only put up 13 points last week, but they get an extra day to prepare. They're going to be motivated. And some points, when Plummer in the offense with Jeff Brom, the former Purdue coach, works, and if Notre Dame, as you said, Hartman struggled a little bit, to me, this is just a weird spot. It is.
It's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be interesting to see if Louisville is really legit. I still think Maryland should have been ranked over them, and I have my reasons. But that's fine. We can get into that later. I think Notre Dame comes in this. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I just think the veteran leadership of Hartman is going to take over. I could see Notre Dame winning a game 21-13, 24-16, something like that.
That's fair. All right. Last one. Michigan, quick. To me, so Minnesota poses a couple different things, which could be interesting. The fact that they're at home prime time is always tough, right? Minnesota's crowd's going to be firing away. Top 15 in time of possession. So they're going to be able to maybe hold the ball a little bit more. I could see it being close for a half. They run the ball, top 35 rushing offense. But Drake May, when they played Minnesota, threw for over 400 yards. They're outside top 70 passing defensive efficiency. This game, to me, this could be a J.J. Roman Cornelius Loveland game. And if they get the ball and start to throw it a little bit, this quarterback, Kayak Manus, and that's how you pronounce it, I looked that up, Kayak Manus, 5 touchdowns, can't run. To me, it's maybe Minnesota keeps it close for a half, but J.J. throwing the ball is going to be the difference here.
It's just hard because you just mentioned top 35 rushing offense. This is not exactly the defense you play when you want to show your top 35 rushing offense. This is a really good matchup for Michigan. This is a quarterback that's not going to make any plays on his feet. If you just put pressure on him, he only has 5 touchdowns on the year. We're in week 6. It's just, to me, this has Michigan winning. I think the Wolverines come in and take care of business. I don't know. Maybe they'll struggle a little bit, but again, we just saw them. In the running game, they didn't need Corum to be the one guy and have no one else run the ball and still be effective. I think they're gonna have to go with that same game plan going into this week. And you're right, JJ McCarthy, he's gonna throw it more than 16 times by far. He's gonna have to throw it a lot more. Roman Wilson's gonna have to be that guy again. I just think Michigan's gonna come in and win this game, and they'll be 6-0.
Yeah, I mean, look, as a fan, I get nervous with the prime time against a team, Minnesota, that's always frisky and tough, and there's a trophy on the line, Brown Jug. But the analyst side of me says, even if it's close for a half, this quarterback matchup is going to favor Michigan. They're going to be able to run the ball, and they're just dominant in every phase of the game.
Yeah.
Dominant. Love saying
that. Dominant, baby.
Wow. All right. So hopefully we'll end it here. I mean, good luck to your team. I really do wish you the best. It might be tough. I mean, if you need any like consultations, therapy, just let me know. If they get blown out in that game.
Vegas doesn't know what they're talking about. It'll be fine. We're good. I'm not worried.
It's the fan side. All right, we can find that. We'll post that link for the game. Seriously, Ohio State, Maryland should be a lot of fun on Big Noon. You can listen to it. I'm gonna listen to it on my phone and watch OU Texas. How great is that?
Oh my God, listening to me, that's awesome.
Oh,
Forget that.
Can't wait.
Listening to me, I mean, cherry on top. Talk about it.
All right. Well, that's it. Week 5 preview. Week 6, we talked about it. We had our top 4. Oliver's top 4 right now. Well, hopefully it stays intact for this week. It is, if you remind me right, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Washington. That's correct.
Yeah.
And then me, I have Texas at number 1. I don't know if it's going to stay this week. Texas, Georgia, Michigan, Oregon. We'll find out that matchup, and I know we'll have so much to talk about next week when we have those our matchup, Oregon, Washington next week. So that's it for the Up Next Network podcast, episode number 8 for Matthew Levy, Oliver Schaack. So long, and go Blue, go Terrapins.
Yes, sir.